When it rains, it pours, and when you get money and find good deals, stuff happens. Stuff like this. You buy optics that you don't need, you don't have the space for, you don't have a real purpose for, but man, oh man, you just want to possess it and test it. That's exactly what happened with this. As you can clearly make out, this is a Vortex Razor, but it's not just any Vortex Razor. No, 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 no. It's not this gigantic, massively heavy, just battering ram of an optic. I want to keep that there because it will be getting brought to light very soon. This, no, 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 no. This is designed to be a lightweight hunter tactical, or LHT for short. And that's exactly what this is. The box is very beautiful, very unassuming. All of your information is going to be there. It's a little blurry, but you can make it out. This is, of course, the 4.5 to 22 version, which is in first focal plane. They do offer this in lower magnification ranges with different reticles. Those are all second focal plane. So if you are going to be buying this or finding one on a really good price for a really good deal, make sure it's the 4.5 to 22 and that it's first focal plane if you want that. If not, it will be a second focal plane optic, and for me and my purposes, that won't be good enough. We have a Vortex sticker. We got some cool redeeming codes for custom ballistic turrets if you want. Well, strips. Fucking awesome. We've got beautiful, beautiful booklets held at the ready in these nice little indexable cards. Oh, it's magnificent. Let's first go over the reticle book. As you can clearly indicate, it is the XLR-2 reticle. First focal plane. It is fairly reminiscent of their 7C, but a little bit less peaks and valley on the windage, which I kind of like. Subtensions right there, everything you're going to need to know. Not going to get too in-depth with this because you can look at this by yourself, pause it, and go over it, but it's basically looks like a really, really nice reticle. Actually fairly similar to like an MR4 reticle from Minox, which I reviewed on the ZP5. I really like that reticle a lot. This is fairly reminiscent of that. It's a functional, simple reticle, and what more could you ever ask for, especially in a tactical optic. Put that back in its nice little slot. Product manual booklet is much thicker because there's a lot more going on. We have the same rev stop system that we saw with the Venom 5 to 25. We have exposed turrets for the elevation, but capped windage, very similar to the Optica 6 with the MRAD 1 reticle. I love that setup, and that's one of the main reasons why I actually bought this. This particular one's, of course, in MRAD, but you can get it in MOA as well. So again, different strokes for different folks. There's our little adjuster for our zero stop. And as far as everything else goes, it's very straightforward and simple. But this thing has another ace up its sleeve, which is something that really excites me. However, another thing that's kind of like, okay, it's good enough, I'll deal with it. There's how we adjust our zero stop. A lot better illustrations on this than what we saw with the Venom, but you know what? It's going to work the exact same way, and that's basically it. Whoa, not knock stuff over. Getting on to the rest of this unboxing, lift this up out of the way. Real thick cell foam right there, and here we have it. As you can clearly see, sunshade is included. Absolutely beautiful. This thing weighs absolutely nothing. Under here should be all of the other accessories that are going to come with it, including our zero stop, our battery, and a nice cleaning cloth. I will, of course, take that out because we're going to go over this the same in-depth way that I went over the Venom, because that's the only way to give you guys the service you need. Oh, okay. Vortex branded bikini covers are fantastic because if you don't want the extra weight, you take them off, throw them in your bag, throw them in your pocket, whatever, and you're left with something absolutely beautiful. The Razor boxes are among the best boxes you'll ever see on the planet. And it's because they have something that's exceptionally nice on the inside. This thing is very, very lightweight. Being a 30mm tube and a 50mm front objective, that's going to help. But there are some other weight savings features on this that really help bring the weight down to, frankly, astronomical levels of lightness. This thing is less than 22 ounces for a 4.5 to 22 by 50 HPVO. For comparison's sake, Meopta Optica 6, which has basically a lot of the same features, capped windage turret, illumination, good stuff, fairly similar magnification range as well. As nice as this is, it's basically 10 ounces heavier. And this thing's already fairly lightweight. So if that doesn't show you how lightweight this thing is, I don't know what will. Oh wait, I do. It's called this thing's bigger brother. This is of course the 3 to 18, which I could also call it the 4.5 to 27, but this thing is more than double. Come on, paperwork. Christ. This thing's more than double the weight of this LHT. Double the weight. Now, comparing these two optics side by side is going to be done at some point, but for right now, it doesn't really add up. It doesn't make sense. Why? Very simply put, this is more primarily a hunting tactical optic as opposed to a full-on tactical optic. They might have a lot of the same feature sets, but ultimately, this thing is designed to be as rugged as possible, where this thing's more or less designed to be as lightweight as possible, and then everything else, it'll do as well of a job with it as it can. But maybe this thing is a little bit more robust than what we are going to play it out to be. But for right off the bat, this being a 30 versus a 34 millimeter tube, we're not going to have as much adjustability on the inside, and it might not be as crisp or as big of an image as what we get with the Razors. The Razors are fantastic as far as giving us a really large image when we look through the optic, as opposed to a lot of its competitors. But if you also remember, the Optica 6 wasn't as big as the PST Gen 2, which was basically a 30 millimeter tube and a 44 millimeter front objective, but a lower magnification range. So maybe this thing will slot itself right in the middle, which would be really slick. I'm getting way ahead of myself. Starting at the back, one of the extra weight-saving features is a non-fast focus eyepiece. This is a standard locking eyepiece. You can see we have a lock collar right there. We can adjust the bell to a very, very fine standard. This thing is very snug. A little bit of wiggle room there, only because we have so much of this thing hanging off where the threads are. But as far as smoothness goes, this thing is in another class, ladies and gentlemen. We'll snug up the lock collar, grab the two, twist together. Guess what? See that? You never have to worry about this thing coming loose unless you grab this and twist. Phenomenal. Magnification ring already has a little throw lever snub little thing going on. That's fine because you don't want it too big. If you're walking around in the bush, having that get caught on stuff would suck. But from 4.5 to 22 is just over 180 degrees, as you can see. I just realized I filmed most of this out of focus, but we're already way too deep into the woods to turn back now. Just over 180 degrees. It is what it is. It just means when you go from minimum to maximum, you're going to have to turn it a little bit more. However, when you turn it, this thing is very, very snug. But again, you don't want this thing to get bumped out of its position for you when you don't want it to do so. I'm sure they do sell throw levers for this if you want a little bit more leverage. As far as how well this thing turns, listen. The seal in there is very, very tight. The splinage on this is nowhere near as aggressive as it was on the Venom. This thing is much more rounded off, so you do have to really implement this little nub every single time you're going to adjust it, which could be worse. There could be no nub. Really shoving this up your butt to say, hey, by the way, you got to get a throw lever on this thing. From there, we're going to take a look at the illumination control, which is a push button, again, more than likely to save weight and to prevent you from bumping into it and turning it on and killing your battery. Push buttons are not the most ideal setup for myself. I would prefer a knob, even if I have to worry about constantly making sure it's off, because you might hit this and be walking around with it and go, oh, shoot, it's on and my battery's dead. Anyway, that's just a nitpick for myself. As far as the button goes, very positive button. You know you're pushing it. A little bit of audio coming back, but not really that much. On the battery compartment, we do see the same splines that you see on the magnification ring, and they do nicely line up. It starts in here tapered, goes all the way through the side focus and into the battery compartment, start to end. That's a really nice little touch. Unscrewing the battery compartment is very easy, very smooth. The button is captive into itself. You can see this is just a silicone pad. So what's happening is the battery is getting pushed into the board, We do have some nice fingers keeping this battery in place, and there is our button control. So as you can see, when you push this button, you push the silicone pad into the battery, into that little button, and that is how you adjust the brightness on this thing. As for our side focus, this thing goes down to a minimum 25 meters and is fairly consistent as far as the spacing goes for distance all the way to infinity. So it's 270 degrees, as you can see, from minimum to its maximum. But look, we go from 25, 30, 40, 50, 60, 75, 100, 150, 2, 3, 5, and infinity. So we have a very broad sort of side focus range on this thing, which should be able to give us a really good image. Now, unlike both the magnification control and the battery compartment, the splines on this are much, much better. You have a lot more purchase on this, and it's easier to grab and to adjust. Again, though, like we saw with the magnification ring, incredibly smooth. That sound you heard was my wrist popping. Very, very good. Excellent damping on this. Truly fantastic. Unlike the Venom we just recently looked at, the elevation turrets on this go up to 6, as you can clearly see. 5, 6 over 0. But again, this is set up much more for hunting than it is for full-on tactical. The Razors are set up for 10 mils per rotation to make it really easy to go out at really long distances. This is sort of an in-between zone where it's giving you the ability if you want it. Because this is, though, a hunting optic, they were smart enough to make these locking. However, this thing unlocks very easily. But at least it locks it nice and tight when it's fully in. Anywho, crack this open. A little bit of play, as you can see. Audio is a little off. It doesn't really sound that loud and that great, but you don't want these being really loud, and then you're in the forest going click, 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 and sound just travels and you scare your prey. No, so again, this makes sense in a more of a hunting role than it does a full-on tactical role. Six mils, we lock it down, we're good to go. They do feel good. Once you get it clicked in, you know that it's there. It's so easy to pick it up through the turret top. You can count this with your eyes closed. Very, very good. As far as our windage control, with this being a really nice drop reticle, you're probably never going to be really adjusting this. But if you do decide to adjust it, you have your 0, 1R, and 1L. This, on the other hand, doesn't feel as good. You can still make out when it goes into the next sort of detent, but it's nowhere near as nice as the elevation control. But again, I'm going to be setting this for 0 at whatever distance, and then probably just holding. So you could make some finite adjustments with this. It goes all the way out to 3 mils per side, minimum, but it's not what I would consider perfect. Perfect would be a little bit more bite to the click and maybe a slightly larger turret. But again, this thing's all about saving weight. So before I go ahead and tell you how to use the Zero Stop, yes, for any of you wondering, this is made in Japan. I showed it on the box, but you might not have been able to see it. All their razors are made in Japan, which is really, really nice to see. So for the $1,400 price point that this thing comes at, you're getting a very lightweight Japanese-made optic, which so far feels and looks the part to which it was designed. Again, cannot stress that enough. Don't be buying this thinking it's going to be a great tactical optic, where clearly the Razor Gen 2 is going to be a better tactical optic. And don't buy this thinking, oh, this is going to be a great hunting optic, because it weighs twice the weight of that. It's not. This is a tactical optic. Something like this, the Meopta Optica 6 or the PST, will jump itself in the middle between the two. But ultimately, this is a hunting optic first. For $1,500, you're getting some really nice Japanese-made stuff. Last thing to talk about before we go ahead and look at it. I know this video is very long. I apologize. There's a lot to talk about with this thing, though. The Zero Stop. If you want to watch this more in depth on how to use this, go check out my Venom 5 to 25 unboxing. I'll link that in the description below. But it's as simple as this. You set this, for example, 2.5, perfect. You unscrew the middle, remove the turret, you install this on top, and you rotate to stop. There's an arrow on the side. You rotate it clockwise till it stops. You put the turret back on at 0, you lock it up, you're done. It's really, really, really easy, almost idiot proof. You leave this inside, and that's it. This thing weighs almost nothing. With all of that finally being said, is this $1,500 Razor even good to look through? Let's find out, shall we? I have really high standards when it comes to any optic that's over $1,000, especially the Razor line, because they've been notoriously good. As far as this thing, the illumination is just daytime noticeable. If we were focusing our attention on a very dark target, it would definitely bring out just enough color to create contrast with it. The push button on this thing, yes, even though it's got a good tactile feel, it's still not all that confidence inspiring. You press it, you hold it, and you're like, is it on? I can't really tell unless you can see it in a darker environment. So again, not the best sort of control. Before I zoomed in, I adjusted the side focus more or less to where we should be, and you could see that the image is already pretty acceptable. I fine-tune it and we get a very good looking image. Of that I had no doubt, but you can see some chromatic aberration popping up on those power lines to the far left. Now, that's not usually something I've noticed in a lot of Japanese-made optics. Usually there's very little to no chromatic aberration, but maybe, just maybe, this optic was designed to have a little chromatic aberration in it when you're looking at game in really nasty, hard contrast areas, such as in the woods, let's say. Anyway, focusing our attention on our 400-yard brick building, again, I adjust the side focus to roughly where our distance is. This being 400 yards, basically exactly, is going to be roughly 360 meters, and that's roughly where I have it currently. As I stated earlier, the magnification ring on this thing is a little tight, and that nub is pretty small. We also don't have a great purchase as far as texture, so it's a lot easier for me to use 2 hands to dial this in very slowly and precisely. Doesn't that image look really good? Well, it does, but we're also not at its maximum. We're at about 18x. Here, 22x indicated, or its maximum. The image does get a little on the softer side. Once I've fine-tuned the side focus just right though, the image is pretty damn sharp. I wish I had a touch more contrast on those bricks in the shadows because again, if you're going to be using this in a twilight sort of time frame, it'd be a little bit nicer to have a little bit more life to it. But ultimately, the image is quite good considering, again, the size and weight of this thing. Notice again the slight chromatic aberration we have at the top of the parapet wall and the top of that white dome above the bricks. Again, it's not too obtrusive, but it's noticeable, and that's definitely something to be said. But that's going to conclude this unboxing. I so far am very impressed with how this optic is performing, given again its size and weight. I can't believe how lightweight it is. Rivals some of the lightest stuff even from Leupold. So, with that, thank you all very much for watching, and as always, see you again next time. And a huge thank you to my Patreon providers and my Subscribe Star subscribers. Without you, this truly wouldn't be possible. If you'd like to support my channel but don't want to join either of those, I completely understand. But you can still help by using my affiliate links in the description below, and or like, share, and subscribe as always. Again, thank you very much.